legislate one, take one. No recollection of what I said.
I can't even remember what the second question is. So Kath, it's great to have you here today to talk about change in the public sector and particularly around culture change. There's so much reorganisation happening within the public sector right now. We've got NHS, we've got ICBs, we've got local government reorganisation. What patterns have you noticed about the impact that change has on leadership and teams?
I think reorganisation and change in public service is the norm. Local government is in a constant state of change as a result of legislation, policy, savings, technology advances, and there's a lot of change in customer expectation. Customers expect much greater level of service than perhaps certainly councils have traditionally delivered. Where it's done well, it's done with people, not to people. Giving people a voice and actively listening and acting on what they say. You can't communicate too much in a change process. Be clear about why you're doing it, what's the benefits, what's the plan, what's the timescales. The other bit around change is, once it's delivered, check that it's delivered what you intended and be willing to review and tweak.
So with the leaders that you're working with around that change, how do you get them on the same goal?
It's being clear about what you want to achieve and work backwards from that. And it's a co-production, not just with the leadership team either, but with staff. But I've got to say, one of the top tips, if you like, one of the things I discovered that worked really effectively was establishing culture champions. So we asked staff right across the organisation to volunteer. They were the conduit between staff and senior leadership and vice versa, so that they would temperature check for us, they would feedback, and they were so passionate. They co-produced it, they communicated it, and it worked a treat.
So thinking then about culture change is something that lots of people talk about, but rarely is it prioritised. What happens when it's overlooked?
Well, that's one of my worries at the moment. With all the local government reorganisation and the creation of strategic authorities, lots of conversations about structure, budgets, governance, not enough conversation about setting the organisational culture. And I've experienced, unfortunately, an organisation where not enough was done to create that culture. So a county that was split into two, one half did lots of work around creating the culture, the other half didn't. Unfortunately, the authority that I ended up working in hadn't done any of that. It created a vacuum that was filled by bad behaviour. That resulted in 3 senior officers, Chief Exec, 151 and MO, all being suspended on the same day, and a police investigation that ran for 3.5 years. I honestly believe, having then become Chief Exec and responsibility to pick up the pieces and change things, was had the investment in organisational culture been done at the time of the creation of the council, those bad behaviours wouldn't have had the opportunity to bloom in the same way.
Absolutely, and I think it's really interesting to see the disaggregation and aggregation of taking down existing structures right now and putting together new organisations. You're potentially going to have pockets of really good culture and pockets of not so good culture. So trying to work out how that lands and also trying to make the most of the better culture is something that's really important. So trust is something that we often talk about. When you've got this constant change that's happening, how do you think that impacts on trust for the workforce, but also for the citizens and the communities that are being served?
I think change creates a lot of anxiety. So I think part of the leadership challenge is trying to manage that uncertainty, being clear with folk what the plan is, why the plan is that, how it's going to happen, the timescales it's going to happen in, and actually engage both staff and residents in that co-production, giving them a voice, but a voice that's not just heard, but listened to and acted upon, and using that voice as well to check out along the way. Is it landing the way you'd hoped? If not, we need to tweak things. And once it's implemented, we rarely get massive change right the first time. So actually being open and honest about that and saying, we'll review again and we'll tweak if it's not right. Because it's not just the what, it's the how. And I think it's the how that creates trust. I mean, one of the regular phrases when I was the Chief Exec was, the change will be the day when there isn't any.
Yes. Yeah, that's very true. So if you were giving one piece of advice to public sector leaders navigating change today, Kath, what would it be?
Do it with, not do it to. That you can't communicate enough, but be clear why you're doing it. Be clear about the benefits, but also be clear about the risks and be clear about how you're seeking to mitigate those risks. So it's that open and honest conversation.
Thank you so much for sharing your insights with us today.
Thank you very much for the opportunity.
I've got a dead foot. I've been crossing my legs for so long.